The Gutierrez map of the Americas is one of only two known examples. One example is in the British Library, the other is in the Library of Congress. I think that it is a work of art as well as being a cartographic document. It was produced by Diego Gutiérrez, who was a chartmaker for the Spanish king. But it was engraved by Hieronymus Koch, who was an engraver working in Antwerp in the mid-16th century. Hieronymus Koch had travelled to Italy and had immersed himself in the art of the Italian Renaissance. The figures exhibit this balance, this grace and this poise, which is absent from other maps of the same time.
It's most beautifully engraved. It appears to be tremendously informative. And the imagery, the coats of arms at the top, and the figure of Philip II at the sea, all of this makes the point that this vast continent is owned by Spain.
It's interesting to see the relationship between map drawing and power, because by the time that you can map something, you can point out as belonging to you. So if they talk, the Spanish or the Portuguese crown talked about Latin America, or let's say Americas in general, they had to show where this America existed in the globe and which parts belonged to whom.
Well, there's a great deal of imagery in the map. We think of maps often as just being cartography, when in actual fact there's a lot more to them than that. The figures of mermaids and the king Neptune in the sea. In addition, there are quite a few animals in the map. Parrots make an appearance. Also a few monkeys in the bottom left-hand corner, which really have a sort of human characteristic to them, which makes you think that these have been engraved and drawn from primary studies.
I think the map is interesting for me in two ways. First of all, I just love it as a visual object. It is extremely handsome. At another level, I'm really fascinated by it as a work of propaganda because, you know, for all the bombast, for all of the trumpeting and so on, it's a very, very subtle piece of propaganda.
If we think about people in Europe in the 16th century, most of them couldn't read. So a map was a very important way of telling this story about a specific civilization. And in this case, we know that in Latin America at that time, very high civilized indigenous population were living in the continent, like the Aztecs, the Mayas, but the map doesn't depict those people, especially, well, I think probably because they were already very close to European lives, in the sense of they had used artifacts and metal. So I think Europeans were much more interested in seeing another world, and that's why they call it the New World. For example, if we look at the Brazilian inland, they depict Indians in an act of cannibalism, which was very much what Europeans thought about South America. If you go south to the map and you go to Patagonia, for example, then you see there are giants depicted there. And the giant is another legend that was at that time credible, and that was for Europeans, that Latin Americans were composed of wild people, dangerous, like nature itself. So it portrays very well this relationship between culture and nature.